In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here from the SHR, the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast. That would be the Bill Mill, that evil building at 10th and L Streets downtown, where late at night you can hear the death of common. You can hear common sense being completely culled from that building, from that monstrous edifice. And at the conclusion of each night that I broadcast, I walk out that door right there. And you can smell the odoriferous, terrible stench of evil, brimstone, and sulfur. You got a belly up to the bar. We've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Tonight is October the 8th, the year of our Lord 2019. Angel is going to be your bartendress tonight. She pours with the best of them. The lava lamp is, in fact, lighted to my right, your left. I got to tell you this, that we don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. All we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle a handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. This is going to be a very interesting show. And as Dave Milner in chat says, where are the sighted women at? A good retort from Dave. And a good retort is always welcomed right here in the saloon. Now, there were some scheduling conflicts, and we finally are going to have ADAM KOKESH on tonight. My hope is that he's going to call here very shortly. He said it was going to be at 11 o'clock. When you're dealing with somebody who is a candidate for a major political office, you hope that they're going to appear on time, but never fret. Because as you have come to expect from BZ all along, we are prepared for every eventuality. And the eventuality tonight is this. Tonight, we have another in what I have had to be a continuing series of firsts right here in the saloon. This is going to be the second time that I have chanced to interview a candidate for president of the United States in 2020. Now, the first individual was a man named Lee Newton Rhodes, who was a Democrat candidate, and I spoke to him on September 19th. And as with many of my recent guests, I became aware of this man via social media on the internet. And in this case, specifically from other libertarians, up to and including a gentleman by the name of David Weichel. Now, as with everybody else, I thought, okay, why not see if he'll respond to an interview request? I'm already, like most things in my life, I'm already at no, okay? Sometimes I actually get to yes. And tonight is one of those yeses as a result of that request. So we're going to soon be speaking to ADAM KOKESH. He is a 2020 Libertarian candidate for President of the United States of America. But if you think this is going to be your standard Mark I Model 1 interview, take that consideration and throw it out the window. Okay? ADAM KOKESH kind of hates the word president. Oh, hang on. We're going to get to that. And only recently did I discover that my friend Kaiser Schuff has already spoken to ADAM KOKESH on his own show, Kaiser's Castle. As you might expect, however, we're going to get into a ton of issues tonight, as you know I am always want to do when I speak to guests right here in the saloon. But if there's one thing that I've discovered after having delved into the background of ADAM KOKESH, at least as indicated on the internet, and that's why I want to talk to him tonight, it's that his story is rife with I guess you could say a wee bit of controversy and a number of arrests. There is so much to unpack here tonight. I'm almost not sure where to begin, except that apparently I do know where to begin because I have 18 pages of questions for Adam tonight, and I know we won't... Oh, Adam, I'm not kidding, dude. And I know we will not get to but a fraction of them. So let's just start at the start. I'd like to welcome ADAM KOKESH into the saloon for the very first time. So good evening, sir, and thank you very kindly for accepting the invitation to be here tonight.
Good evening, Mark. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, although I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to point out thoroughly tonight, I must make sure it is understood that my disdain for the presidency extends beyond the semantic, but I do appreciate such a thoughtful introduction.
Oh, wait, you have not but just a taste of what's yet to come. Because finally, I don't know if you've ever had anybody that sat down to interview, and you're like miles and miles away on the East Coast someplace, and I'm way over on the left coast.
I'm actually in Junction, Colorado, or Grand Junction, Colorado tonight, on my way home to northern Arizona.
Oh, cool. Okay, I can see you from here. There you are, waving at me. Thank you, Adam. Good to see you. But here's the deal, dude. I think I may have sussed you out. I think I may have, after looking at all the stuff on the internet, and I've had about a week and a half or 2 weeks to consider a lot of this stuff. And I'm going to attempt to possibly do something tonight that I don't think that anybody that has ever spoken to you before is, I think I know what makes you tick.
This sounds fun.
I'm not sure. I'm going to throw it out there. It's maybe nothing more than attempting to nail Jell-O to a tree. Don't know. But I'm going to try to go there. But there's, like I said, there's so much stuff to unpack. And the other thing is, I also want to thank you for staying up late because you're not in the same time zone as I am. You're in Colorado, and everybody that's a regular listener to the show, and there's a ton of people in chat. Welcome to Mike, welcome to Dave, welcome to Donnie Smith, that's somebody new, Alaskan One Viewer, and some other folks. Everybody knows that most of my guests are not from this time zone, and so when I talk to them, they stay up late. If they do the live thing, they stay up late. So thanks for doing that, ADAM KOKESH. Thanks for staying up a little bit later tonight, sir.
Well, really, that's the least of the investments I am called to make for my sense of purpose, and certainly for this campaign, and just staying up to have a chance to chat with you, Mark, is certainly an insignificant burden.
Thank you kindly. I very, very much appreciated that. I started scouring the internet and found a fair amount of material on you. I'm actually pretty excited. I'm actually very excited to get to speak to you tonight. Because, as I said before, I think this is going to go a couple of places a lot of people here that customarily listen to me do not know. I think I have a surprise or two for the listeners, and I think you have a surprise or 48 for the very same listeners. I think this could be quite revealing. I always like to talk to guests that are not in absolute lockstep congruent thinking with me, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that I had you on tonight. And I find a number, I'll just be honest, I find a number of your stances fascinating, amusing, They blow me away. They're an impossibility. And yet, are they? I'm not sure. Okay, with this caveat, I look for two very important variables or values, I guess, in an interview. Honesty and clarity. So some of my questions may be blunt, but I think you know the reason why now. And these are probably questions that you probably have been asked before. So what I'd like to do tonight, kind of in this order, is go a bit into your background, your schooling, those situations and persons who may have influenced you as you grew up, your higher education, jobs, experience, political alignments, and then finally we will do your platform. We will do your thoughts. We will do your issues. We will do what you believe that you can do as president for the United States of America. But I know you want to go someplace already, Adam. I sense it. I can hear it. I can see the gears turning in your brain. I know where you want to go. Don't go there just yet. Let's let that be a little bit of a surprise. So hang on. I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Okay, the first things first, though. Adam Kokesh, where can you be found on social media? And what are the
easiest thing?
What are the websites? What are the websites that you'd like people to visit, please?
Well, it's all based on one. My main website is thefreedomline.com. 3 words, thefreedomline.com. You can find my book there for free in every digital format possible, including audiobook and translations, all done by volunteers into about half a dozen languages. And you can find kokeshforpresident.com from there without having to remember how to spell my funny last name. And, of course, you can find my YouTube channel and all my social media whatnots through there as well.
Okay. And for folks in chat, because you can listen on Spreaker, you can listen live at shrmedia.com, or you can go to the SHR Media YouTube channel or the Facebook page. For those people that are in chat, I just put thefreedomline.com link up in chat. So you can go there right now, quick like a bunny, and see what Adam Kokesh is all about. If people want to donate to your campaign, A, can they do that? And B, if so, where?
Absolutely, and you can still find that through the Freedom Line, but kokeshforpresident.com. And, of course, we accept crypto in every way we possibly can.
Okay. Adam Kokesh, where are you living these days? You're in Colorado, but I'm assuming that that's because you're campaigning right now?
Well, I'm in the middle of some campaign logistics, actually. It's just a stopover tonight in Grand Junction, but I was in Denver for some important meetings. I'm heading home to Ash Fork, which is in the mountains about an hour west of Flagstaff. And I've got Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association with Sheriff Mack this weekend in Mesa, Arizona, and a couple more meetings in Phoenix, and back to Dallas, hopefully to pick up No Force One and get our campaign bus back on the road. But she's had a rough year. It's been pretty tough, but hopefully we're at the last phase of getting her back on the road, and I really do miss campaigning with the bus because you just sort of automatically connect with everybody, everywhere you go. And, the bus says we don't have to be united under one government to be united in American values. And that really gets people going. And I'm shocked to hear over and over again, I don't normally vote, but I come out and vote for that. And that is so huge, the potential of this message. And I know we're gonna hold the lead on this one. But the idea of localization really is not just unifying people, but giving people a voice in the political conversation who feel like they have been shut out by the duopoly.
When you said that you are, number one, you're in Arizona. And Arizona, Arizona reminds me of Roger Ramjet when he said in this one line, "Damn, it's hot. I guess it's from the heat." Arizona is so damn hot. I would move there because of the freedoms of Arizona, but man, the heat, you're a better man than I, Gunga Din.
Well, no. You're looking at the wrong part. See, in Phoenix, it's insanely hot, and it regularly gets up to, 110, 115 in the summer, and then at night you go, oh, it's going to cool off. Nope, it's still in the 90s at night. That's ridiculous. But it's really only because of the political and economic manipulations in the state that we have Phoenix is the center of population as opposed to Flagstaff, which is in the mountains where there's skiing. And that's instead of 1,000 feet elevation at Phoenix level, you're at 7,000 feet. And I'm at 5,200. So I'm a lot closer to Flagstaff than to Phoenix. We get a few weeks of snow every year in Juniperwood Ranch, and a very, very nice Mediterranean climate. There's actually a lot of the state that's like that and just truly beautiful. I'm a big booster of Arizona. I chose the location very, very carefully, not just for the freedoms, but for the community and the culture of freedom and everything else, but also the climate and the scenery in the mountains in Arizona. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
I could do Flagstaff and Prescott, I think. So you make a good point about that. I think if I were to cherry pick, I could do those areas. Adam Kokesh, where were you born and where did you go to school? And how did your upbringing or family life manage to impact you today?
Well, I mean, we are only on for an hour, right? Okay, let's see. I was born in San Francisco.
Okay, now that's another issue. Let me throw this out there, because all of the people in chat customarily give me hell if I don't make this offer. We originally offered you a half hour. Then I offered you an hour. If it turns out that it goes longer than an hour, I have no issue with that. But at the end of the hour, if you have to go away, perfectly understandable. But if we're not done, would you be willing to continue?
We'll see. Well, if the chat's still throwing good questions out, maybe at that point. But they got to be good. They're going to have to be good. We'll see. But anyway, so I grew up in the Bay Area, fairly well-off parents, upper middle class, pretty comfortable. And the one major trauma of my childhood was my parents' divorce when I was 10 and my brother was 8. And that's a pretty terrible time for, a child who's still forming or hasn't formed their concept of themselves as an adult, as an individual human being, to go through a nasty, contentious divorce as it was. And, there really are, it really is an underrepresented issue in American politics today that I'm really glad to have the opportunity to speak to in light of my platform, which is the victims of family law courts, victims of child protective services.
You could do an entire show on that. Oh, hell yeah.
And there are just people are so sadly shamed, tragically shamed out of speaking up on this issue when they are the victims of government management of their personal lives, of their family lives, of their children's lives, of their divorces. And it's something that's really hard to speak up against. And it's really exciting to see that there's a growing sense of awareness that you're not the only one being bullied into silence. Every American is touched by this now. Every American, at least in their, if not their immediate family, their extended family, has been touched by some form of legal interference into their family lives. Sometimes invited. If you get legally married, government married, you're kind of inviting that into your life, and you have to be really careful about that. If you have a child and you get them a birth certificate, and it's not easy to get out of that, but there are ways to have children off the record and to protect them from that. I have a number of friends who are doing that. Then I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. I enlisted in the delayed entry program, went to boot camp as soon as I was able to when I graduated. And the other major influence of my youth, I suppose, leading up to that point, was in high school. I got kicked out of a boarding school, and I went to boarding school to avoid the joint custody situation with my parents, going 1 week with one and a week with the other. And about a month into my junior year, I think it was a month, I got kicked out of high school I was going to in Colorado, and the opportunity that presented itself was to be the only white student at Native American prep school, and I that's the opportunity I took, and it was a blessing in disguise to get kicked out and still manage to pull decent grades together and get into a good college. But that experience of being one white student at a tiny school of 63 students altogether where there were 32 different tribes represented, was really, I think, a formative experience for me. And getting that experience of being an absolute minority in that community was really enlightening, and I think gave me a good perspective and a sort of varied kind of experience that most Americans don't get, sadly, especially in government-run schools where you're, put in cemetery row seating and not taught how to think, but what to think and how to be obedient, of course. It is really sad, even in the educational experience I've had, to now look back on it and see in how many ways I am stunted in my development and growth because a certain amount of autonomy that I think is the natural, fully actualized state of a human being had been conditioned out of me by the government standard of education, the government schooling that I had until I went off to high school, which even then the curriculum was relatively mostly determined by that government standard. And so I fell for the propaganda. I enlisted in the Marines. I signed up to kill for politicians. And I wanted to have my life on the line for something I believed in. So being in the Marines meant something to me. Having a combat MOS, I started in field artillery, meant something to me. And while I was in college as a reservist, I volunteered to go to Fallujah in 2004 with the Civil Affairs Unit to do a lateral move from one MOS to another, from artillery to civil affairs, and had a rather enlightening experience with my little semester abroad. I was in Fallujah from February, September of 2004. I was there for the first battle. That was April in Fallujah, the siege of the city. Not what most people know as the Battle of Fallujah, which was the big one, the second one in November, that was the sweep through the city. And got out and joined Iraq Veterans Against the War. There's a lot more to the story and getting to that point, but that experience of getting out, and I should say, I didn't just get out. I volunteered to go back to Iraq, but got in trouble for having brought a pistol back as a souvenir the first time, one that I had purchased. It wasn't a war trophy or something I stole or anything like that. I bought it from a translator, but instead of going back to Iraq, I spent a year as a sergeant who spoke Arabic with combat experience, managing a barracks and mowing lawns, and was very disgruntled when I got out. They busted me down from sergeant to corporal the day after I got pinned with a Navy Commendation Medal for my time in Iraq, and I was just thinking, what a waste this was. But when I got out, it wasn't, just that I felt like I had done my part and, volunteered for 2 combat tours, even though I only did one. But I really had originally intended to become an officer and do enlisted time as a reservist and even get some combat experience when I could. But there was something in the back of my mind that just was like, no, that's enough, and I got out, and it was really only, because I was disgruntled that I started questioning everything. And it wasn't because I'm some great enlightened, awakened soul that sees evil and understands it right away, but as has been famously said, the line between good and evil runs through every human heart, and I had to experience participating in a certain amount of evil myself to be a party to a war crime, to really understand the significance of what we're doing now and to be called to a higher purpose and service that originally motivated me to enlist in the first place, to put my life on the line and commit to what I'm doing now as an activist and as a candidate standing up to the greatest injustice in the world, that is the federal government of the United States.
Okay. ADAM KOKESH.
That might be jumping ahead a little bit.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You opened the door. There were a ton of intersections and roads that you could have gone down, and you went down there. And I customarily try to ask every guest that I have on the show for the very first time, and I'm going to try to flesh it out a little bit more. Okay. One of the questions customarily is, were there any incidents or events in your life that I term pivotal moments, where your life was progressing one way and then suddenly took a different direction for an important reason, perhaps a reason that you hadn't the ability to foresee at all? So you beat me to my question But since that's okay, since you opened that door, let's address it and let's go there. Now we got 5 more minutes before we hit the bottom of the hour break, and maybe we can do it in 5. Probably not. We're going to have to hold this question probably over after the break. But since you went there, Adam Kokesh, the question is this: it seems to me, and this is what I think I understand about you, is that your time in service in the U.S. military, and maybe it shouldn't be a statement, maybe it should just be a question. Was it your time in the U.S. military where you met that pivotal moment head on and every damn thing in your life changed, politically and otherwise? Would that be remotely accurate?
Yeah, and it wasn't anything about combat. I wish I had had the presence of mind and consciousness to have learned the lessons of my combat experience while I was there. But I think the conditioning does a good job of really raising that human tendency to avoid difficult truths in moments of challenge, and that's what I did. The moment that was most pivotal for me was when I found out that I wasn't going back to Iraq, that I had gotten in trouble. And I was actually in training with a new unit, I should say a new team with the 3rd Civil Affairs Group, to go back to Iraq for a second tour. And it was, I think, just a couple weeks before we were set to leave that I was told I was not going because I was getting investigated. And I have had very few moments that even come close in terms of frustration in my life, of saying I am here in service, I am here to put my life on the line for my country, because that's what I thought I was doing. Of course, knowing now it's for the government, for the corrupt special interests, for the military-industrial complex. I certainly have a different perspective on that. But it was a turning point for me in which I realized that my higher calling was not in line with the life I had chosen, that I was living, that I was embodying as a paid killer. And that's what you are when you join the military. Even if you're just helping, you're a part of the people who volunteer to organize the effort to kill people on behalf of politicians. And now when people say thank you for your service, I usually take the opportunity to say, well, do you really know who I was serving? Because it wasn't the American people. It wasn't the country. It was the government. It was the politicians and the bankers and the war profiteers and the military-industrial complex. And to realize that, when I think it is part of every human's process of achieving self-actualization to discover a sense of purpose that really resonates with what they see as the course of progress of humanity, to serve that greatest calling that one can possibly identify and embrace. And for me, it's very clear how I choose to do that it is an embodiment for me of the service in the warrior ethos. And to me, enlisting in the Marine Corps was the ultimate embodiment of that in my state of ignorance. And having been propelled by that moment of frustration when I found out I wasn't going to deploy, to question, and it still took me years, but to be propelled by that frustration to question and realize that what I am first and foremost is an activist. I am motivated by a deep-seated sense of injustice, and I am truly blessed to have a very clear form that has taken for me in my activism, in a way that I get to embody what to me is that divine warrior spirit, of someone who is willing to risk their lives or risk their life for justice, someone who's willing to put their life on the line for what they believe in. And really, that is something that we are all called to now as activists, that we cannot just, in the connected world that we live in, see the injustices visited upon our family members in the great family of humanity and say, I could do something about it, but I'm not. I'm going to just walk on by and pretend like I don't see this injustice. And more people are embracing that.
Okay, we got to take a break, folks. We'll be back after about 5 minutes. When we come back, and I'm going to ask ADAM KOKESH right now. ADAM KOKESH is the 2020 Libertarian candidate for President of the United States, but he really isn't. We'll get into that after we come back, because right about now you're saying, BZ, what the hell? I can see the air question marks right above your heads as I say this. But I'm going to ask ADAM KOKESH when he gets back. There seemed to be that was a central pivot point. And when you went to the Middle East, I'm going to ask ADAM KOKESH. And when we get back, Adam, what were some of the more vital, more important lessons that you learned from the Middle East? And having learned or seen those lessons, how did you determine that you were going to apply them to your life when you returned? That's the question we'll ask when we get back. I am BZ. You're in the saloon, the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here from the SHR Media Network studios. Take a break. We'll be right back with ADAM KOKESH. Don't go anywhere, please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct, right here from the sumptuous, resplendent, and palatial SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And as we always know on the show, California is only spelled with a K. Tonight we have ADAM KOKESH on the show. He is running as the 2020 Libertarian candidate for President of the United States of America. ADAM KOKESH, I asked you, I said before the show that I was going to ask you that after your service in the military, life apparently has taught you some major lessons, capital M, capital L, major lessons. And so what would some of those lessons be, and what did you take out, I should say, of that experience?
Oh, wow. Well, I have two tattoos, I think, that summarize the major lessons that I want to remember. And the first one I got when I was in the Marines, and I had just completed my advanced infantry training and was at Field Artillery School in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And this was when, and I don't know if this is still the case, but tattoo parlors were banned in Oklahoma. And
really?
It's a bit of a fun story. I'll try to make it short, but
wow.
Basically it was the first time I was on active duty in the Marine Corps and had weekends off. And so when other Marines would rent a car to carpool down to Wichita Falls, Texas, to right outside the Air Force Base where there were tons of tattoo parlors. And my mom said that she would come for the weekend. I said, guess what, Mom? You're not just going to rent a car. You're going to rent a van, and you're going to take me and all my buddies down to get tattoos in Wichita Falls, Texas. And so that's what we did. And the tattoo on my left forearm says, for those who fight for it, life has a special flavor the protected never know. And that was allegedly written, at least according to Marine Corps lore, by a Marine in Vietnam who wrote it on the side of a sea rations box before going off to die in the rice paddies. And it became something of a trendy thing for Marines to write on their flak jackets and helmets when that was acceptable. And then I saw it when I was in Devil Pups, when I was, I think, 13 years old. And it was at Camp Pendleton on a mural, for those who fight for it, life has a special flavor the protected never know. And I came home from that at 13 years old and told my dad, I was like, Dad, I got to get this tattoo. And he said, really? Well, if you can get it down to 5 words, maybe you can get it.
5 words.
Dad is, little. So I waited. And when I was, 5 years later in the Marines on active duty, I got that tattoo, and it does summarize so much and has so many layers of meaning. For those who fight for it, life has a special flavor. It could be the flavor when you're talking about what is the it there for those who fight for it, or is it fighting for life? Is it those who fight at those stakes, for those who live life at that level? Life has a special flavor. The protected never know. And is the protected those who are protected by those of us willing to stand guard and pick up a rifle in the name of the collective, or is it those who protect themselves, who live lives of quiet desperation, sheltered lives, if you will, protecting themselves from really getting out and fighting for what makes life worth living? And then on my right arm, I have another tattoo, and instead of USMC by the wrist, it says IVAW for Iraq Veterans Against the War. And just ever so neatly, the lesson, the major lesson, if you will, taken from that experience is a Jimi Hendrix quote: "When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace." And the power of love in the process of human progress, of intelligent life seeking harmony, all the way down to the essence of life itself, of the progress of intelligent life in particular, but even at the fundamentals of multicellular organisms beating out single cellular organisms. Humans that love and cooperate and seek harmony with other humans are more likely to survive and thrive than those who seek conflict and disagreement and are unwilling to create win-win relationships out of love and respect that really is at the heart of my activism and the message of freedom. And I would say that the reason I have those tattooed on me is not because I've learned the lessons, but because the lessons for me have been recognizing those ideals and those values by which I would like to live my life to the fullest. And having the reminders of those on my forearm seems to have served me well.
As I suspected, after I looked at a lot of videos. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going to get to tonight. You've been arrested a bunch of times. I was going to ask you about some videos. I've got some audio I was going to play, blah, blah, blah. Not going to get to that because we're kind of running out of time. I got about 17 minutes left at the top of the hour if you got to go. So let me get down to this. Let's start cutting to the chase a little bit. It's nut cutting time. Maybe, practically speaking, is there, and I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But I'm going to follow it up with something that I think is going to resonate. Practically speaking, is there a snowball's chance in hell you'll get even remotely close to anything resembling a significant number of serious votes?
It would take Mark, before I answer that, I will take the liberty here of explaining the platform, because I know your audience has been waiting, but it needs to be said before we explain the strategic significance of running on this platform.
Okay, but that's not the point, though, right? That's not the point, is it?
Well, hold on.
Okay.
It is actually in this case.
Okay.
Because the platform, every time I have to introduce myself as a presidential candidate, I throw up in my mouth a little bit, because you really have to be some kind of psychopath to want to be president of the United States, to wield this power, this authority over other human beings that shouldn't exist. And
perfect
localization of government, taking it apart from the top down, restoring the power to communities, to voluntary associations instead of coercive collectives. That's the progress of humanity that gets us towards freedom. That's how we ease our way out of this system in a peaceful, orderly manner. So unlike any other presidential candidate, I'm not running to say I'm going to put on the ring of power and somehow I'm not going to be corrupted by it, that somehow I'm special, capable of wielding this power and not being corrupted by it and being a better ruler, a better presider over your life. Absolutely not. The platform I am running on is the peaceful, orderly, and responsible dissolution of the entire federal government. So I am throwing the ring in the fire on day one, resigning the presidency, declaring the federal government bankrupt and of no authority, taking the post of custodian of the federal government, serving as its bankruptcy agent to take us through a peaceful, orderly, responsible process it leaves us with 50 independent states and up to 562 sovereign native nations. So to answer your question, looking at 2020, it would take a black swan event to accelerate the paradigm shift that we are experiencing already for any libertarian on any platform to be able to overthrow the entrenched duopoly in 2020. Now, there are some very brilliant minds on my campaign team working at various ways that we could engineer potentially a black swan event for 2020, because this country is ripe. We have been creeping towards a tipping point of dissatisfaction where the American people know, we know that we're getting ripped off. We know that we don't have to be working paycheck to paycheck. We know that we shouldn't be struggling in this country of all places, that we are being ripped off by our government, primarily the federal government, at the behest of the corrupt special interests, of the bankers, of the corporatists, of the string pullers, of everybody who is ripping us off for their benefit. And I think what is realistic, even without such a pivotal black swan moment in 2020, is that we can build on Gary Johnson's 3.28%, that we can take another 3% of the independents and we give them a real alternative, but also that we can bring in a big chunk of that 40% of the American electorate that never votes in presidential elections, because like I said, what I hear more than anything else is, I don't normally vote, but I'll come out and vote for that. This is the ultimate middle finger to the establishment to say, no, I don't even buy the premise of your system anymore. I will not allow the federal government to exist. Now, occasionally I get asked, is this constitutional? Of course not. Absolutely not. That's kind of the point. We are appealing to the higher authority known as the Declaration of Independence, which says we have not only a right but a duty to alter and abolish systems of government that no longer serve us. And if we just achieve this 10% in 2020, which I think is rather conservative as a goal for what we can achieve with this platform, we will have blown open the Overton window, and it won't be long before America realizes that this is an idea whose time has come, that this is the calling of our generation, that this is the final American Revolution, that this is fulfilling the promise of the first American Revolution to realize real, enduring freedom by shifting the paradigm of statism entirely on its head, all the way to freedom, and saying, no, we're not going to put up with centralized coercive systems of authority at all. That we are going to take government apart. We're going to face up to this with a solution as big as the problem. We are not going to allow ourselves to go the way of the Roman Empire. We are going to embrace the future boldly as Americans.
Thank you. That's why I got what I got, and you went there. And that's why I asked that question, and that's the ADAM KOKESH I wanted to see. So here, because I don't see you, so thank you for going there. It is about the votes, but to you it's also the transformation as well, is it not?
Absolutely, but I will say one thing. There is a specific line in the sand that has been drawn with this campaign already. The federal government of the United States of America is not going to last forever. The sooner we can put it out of its misery, the better. But if you look at that long-term picture and say that, you know what, if it's not going to last forever, it is up to us how it is going to end. And if we keep our heads buried in the sand, it's going to be ugly. There's going to be some kind of collapse. There's going to be upheaval. There's going to be some kind of widespread suffering. And I think those of us who see the potential for this, it is incumbent upon us to do something about it. And I will continue to run until the federal government ceases to exist one way or another, as long as I'm getting support and building support, and that's what's happening with this campaign right now. But to call back to the activism here, the injustice, if you think about what's the difference between the federal government ending 5 years from now versus 45 years from now, not just can we do it smoothly, but just allowing it to continue. Think about the lives that hang in the balance. And just as one example, if you're a nerd like me and you need numbers to hang your hat on. The FDA is responsible for tens of thousands of deaths every year by pushing unsafe drugs and keeping life-saving drugs off the market and perpetuating a criminal war on drugs that is really a war on you that keeps life-saving medicine out of the hands of the American people. What is the difference of 40 less years of just that? Millions of lives. Millions of lives we can save by saying we are going to stop this criminal institution from existing.
Adam Kokesh, I have a caller on the phone. Would you be interested in taking a question from a caller?
Absolutely.
Okay, caller, you are on. Go ahead. You're talking to Adam Kokesh.
Outstanding, BZ. Thank you. Simplify, Adam, and Sabah Nur. I met you in London, Ohio, at the Kroger's when you were camping out. I told BZ the story, so I won't get into it, but it was just a serendipity, and you came on my show, and I told him, I said, this is one of the best dudes I've had on my show, and I knew that this would be epic, and I had to tune in. And I just wanted to say, keep up the fight, brother. I mean, we may disagree on a few small things, but you know what? Disagreeing is what Americans are supposed to do, and I can't find fault with a lot of the things you say. So, you know what I mean? You're starting a conversation. That was what was the most important part when I had you on, brother, because you started a needed conversation.
That's I think the important part is listening and having new people on the show that you haven't heard before or that you may disagree with. Adam, I'll tell you, there's a bunch of stuff with which I disagree with you, but I want to have the conversation. We need to hear different points of view. That's incredibly important, to have a good, cogent, intelligent, peaceful conversation between two rational, intelligent adults and have a discussion. That's why I wanted you on tonight. Kaiser, thank you for pointing that out.
That is why he is a warrior. He chewed some of the same sand I did, BZ, and for that I give him nothing but kudos. And Adam, God bless you. You know what I've told you before. You know, I really appreciate your run, and that's all I have to say, BZ. And thank you for having this gentleman on, because Adam is starting a conversation that needed to happen.
I agree.
And God bless you both.
I agree. Right, I don't need to agree with Adam. Adam probably doesn't agree with a lot of the stuff that I say, but I need to hear him, and I'm not going to cut him off.
Well, thank you, BZ. If I may, before I forget, I've got two things that I want to say in response to Kaiser, and I appreciate the support there, and that is huge. And to what you said about agreeing or disagreeing, I think what we can agree on and unite on, and what localization, this platform, this campaign has the potential to unite people on, is that our true enemies are not in the sands of some far-off land, but right here at home, living in Washington, D.C., and pulling the strings from behind the scenes of our government. And we don't have to agree on how we should then live. We don't have to agree on what kind of community we want to live in order to unite against this unjust, evil power that runs the world today. This is the power of localization, because today polarization is the result of centralization. That when you say we're going to force everybody into this one-size-fits-all solution, and it's really fits the profiteers of government at the expense of everyone else. When you're a liberal and you meet a conservative on the street, you kind of have to see them as an enemy and say, well, we're going to fight, politically at least, and one of us is going to win and get to force our will on the other person or the other group. And that's insane. I can't think of anything more un-American than that. But if we localize government, if you get it down to the community level, if you make it something born of freedom rather than tyranny, then you can say, I can meet you as a fellow American and say, we're not united under one government. We're united in American values and respect for each other's freedom. You want to live in a liberal community, you want to live in a conservative community, that's great. I want you to have that freedom. And BZ, for you, it doesn't matter that I want to live one way in the mountains in Arizona and you want to live in communist California, and let's hope they secede as soon as possible. You know, that's okay. If that's how you want to live, I respect your right to live in a commune as big as the great state of California where I used to live. I'm all for that freedom of self-determination, even at, not just at the individual level, but for individuals coming together as communities. And the second thing is, I'm not starting a conversation. I'm drawing a line in the sand. That's what this is. I'm technically running for president of the United States, but it's much more accurate to say that we are, with this campaign, everyone involved, turning the federal election into a referendum on whether or not the federal government should be allowed to continue to exist at all. And we will win eventually, because people will come over to the side of righteousness one way or the other. I have no doubt about it. The course of human history is such that, as Martin Luther King Jr. said it, the arc of history bends towards justice. I have no doubt that this injustice will end. And all it takes for people to do to support this effort is to get involved with the Libertarian Party and be a delegate to the National Convention. You don't get to vote in the primary. The only primary for the Libertarian nomination that's relevant is of the delegates at the National Convention. This is so easy. It is so embarrassingly, shockingly easy to jump into politics, especially with the Libertarian Party, and have a major voice and a major role. And everybody who understands what Kaiser said, except for that last part, is the only, and I hate to sound contrarian, to home in on that one thing that we're going to disagree on, is that this is not starting a conversation. This is drawing a line in the sand. If you're not doing something better with your life, if you're not fighting some bigger injustice, if you don't have some greater sense of purpose that motivates you, that's worth putting your life on the line for, I hope you'll join us in this campaign, because, we calculated this past weekend that I'm more likely to get assassinated in 2020 than to win. So I hope that you're willing to, at least when you see that this is the line in the sand, come over to the righteous side and put in a little effort to help bring other people across.
Dude, you are fired up. That's another reason that I wanted you on the show tonight. Tell us about voluntarianism. What is that?
Voluntarism. Yeah, so a lot of people mistake libertarianism as an individualist ideal or a political ideal, and it's really neither of those things. Libertarianism, broadly defined, is belief in freedom. And if you think about it for a second, you come to understand that freedom is what you have when no one is forcing their will on you, when your rights are respected, when you're allowed to live in peace and exercise your rights fully without forceful interference. This is based on the idea that you own yourself as an individual human being. And so there is that individualist aspect to it, but you could describe this entire ideology just as well through relationships and say that in order for a society to be free, all relationships have to be voluntary, have to be entered into by choice, have to be free of force or fraud or coercion. And that's the definition of voluntary, and that ideal of voluntarism is the ideal of a society in which there is no institutionalized coercion in the form of an authoritative government.
This is probably the last question I'm going to be able to ask tonight, and I appreciate your being here. I got 2 more minutes before the top of the hour break. People love freedom. People say that they love freedom. They espouse freedom. They embrace it. They love it. They want it. Why hasn't libertarianism spread like wildfire across the United States and across the entire planet, as a matter of fact?
Well, I would say that historically speaking, it is spreading like wildfire. We are the fastest growing party in the United States. More than any other political, really anti-political ideology that is challenging the mainstream of statism, of turning to authority and coercion to organize the world, we are growing. It is a tough thing because it really does represent a fundamental shift. And I would say that humanity has progressed. We are living in the least violent times, the most peaceful times in human history. We have embraced ethics, and yet we make this exception. Don't hit, don't steal, don't kill, unless you're a cop or a soldier or an IRS agent, and that's nonsense. But those ideas of statism are so imbued in the mass paradigm that it does take a certain intellectual courage. I do believe we are achieving a tipping point within the next decade, and I think this campaign can help take us to that tipping point ideologically. So there is that huge advantage as well in waking people up. I do see that we are coming to a point of critical mass where the idea of turning to government itself, that the idea of using violence or coercion to organize society is just going to be so laughably obsolete as to be irrelevant. So there are some major hurdles, and you say, why is it only going as fast as it is? There's an entrenchment in the institutions, in the duopoly, and in the paradigm, and in the fear that we have to overcome. Because there is a fear of stepping into the unknown. There is a fear of giving up comfortable slavery for invigorating freedom. And America has to face that fear. And I hope that with this campaign, we can give America that opportunity.
Okay, Adam Kokesh, I understand you got to go. I get it. I would like to do this, however, between now, October the 8th, 2019, because you and I know that so much is fluctuous these days. Change is absolutely endemic and rampant. It ain't going to stop, folks, between now and, say, January or February of 2020, right around in there after the holidays and whatnot. Adam Kokesh, can I have you back on the show? Because I'm sure that there's going to be an assload of stuff that will have happened or occurred in between the time that we have spoken tonight and then. Would you be interested in coming back, sir?
Absolutely. Let's schedule something for early January as we're kicking off convention season. And it's January to April when states, Libertarian Party state organizations come together to select their delegates to national in May. It'd be a great time to see as convention season is ramping up to check in with you again.
Okay, that'd be great. Sometime in January, I'll check in with Marcus. In the meantime, before we go, one final thing, your social media and or the most important site that you can point people to, and also if they wish to donate to you, Adam Kokesh, 2020 Libertarian candidate, but kind of not for President of the United States. But now they understand. Now they understand.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, BZ. Mark, I really this is a great opportunity. I really appreciate that. And before I plug myself, I just want to mention to your audience, for people who are listening through, SHRmedia.com or Spreaker or whatever else it is, this is only possible in the age of the internet, and this technology is incredible, but it means nothing without deliberate, conscientious use, application, and shows like this cannot succeed without active, engaged audiences. So please, if you made it to this point in the show, share this, bring other people into the audience if you're listening live, whatever it takes to grow the conversation. If you want to find me online, The Freedom Line, you can find everything that you need about me from there.
Thank you very, very much, sir. Adam Kokesh, live from Colorado. This is not pre-recorded. This is Adam Kokesh, God dang it. Okay, that's not funny. Folks, that's not funny. Extemporaneously. Damn it, I got it. I nailed it. Son of a bitch. Okay, Adam Kokesh, thanks ever so kindly for being here tonight, sir. We will have you back in January.
Thank you so much, brother. Peace and love, y'all.
Alrighty, take care. Whew, I actually said it. I actually got it out. Okay, now that I've got it out, we're going to put it back in. We're going to go to a break and be back. If you think that I don't have a ton of other stuff to talk about tonight, and two incredibly great articles by Victor David Hansen and Kurt Schlichter about, do you think Kurt weighs in about Syria and leaving Syria? Yeah, I bet he does.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian, Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is the second hour in the late night radio world. It's about 8 minutes after 9 o'clock on the far left coast. That means it's about 8 minutes after midnight on the far right coast. And that means it's 1749 and 17107.723, paragraph 4, Growth Cluster 5 time in Bolivia, because Bolivian time is messed up. And thanks for being here tonight. In the first hour, I had ADAM KOKESH. Spread the word, ADAM KOKESH. I said in chat that I got to 6 pages of questions with ADAM KOKESH tonight. As I told him at the very beginning of the show, I had 18 pages of questions for ADAM KOKESH. So that's another reason that I wanted him back on the show. Those people who listen to this show know that there are going to be some things with which I disagree with Adam and many libertarians. But that doesn't mean poop. What is important is listening to other people's points of view, and you pull what you consider to be the important and salient aspects out of people that you speak to, and you respect them for their opinions, and you provide people with a platform so that they can speak and you have an understanding of where they're coming from. If there was only one thing that I think I wanted to portray, and I think I was successful in doing this, was ADAM KOKESH's primary pivotal point was going across the pond into the Middle East. That changed him. And there are some very important aspects that I've noticed from the past 2 libertarians who have been on the show. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, I had David Weichel on the show. He's a libertarian, but he's running for Republican senator of South Carolina against Lindsey Graham. He's primarily a libertarian, but there are 2 commonalities that I discovered between David Weichel and ADAM KOKESH. Their worldview changed markedly when they went to the Middle East. I sensed that from David Weichel. That's what I pulled out of the convo with him. And I sensed that tonight that's what ADAM KOKESH was going to tell me. I kind of steered him in that direction, and then I wanted to centralize on what I considered to be that very important point. And that's what occurred. So I want to indicate also, I think Donnie in chat already put up one website where you can go. And there's another one that he has called KOKESH for President, all one word, KOKESHforpresident.com. It's a homepage. It tells you about his platform, gives you his store, tells you about Adam, tells you how you can contribute, tells you how you can connect with him, gives you his blog and various endorsements. I want to get into 2 stories tonight. Mike has been waiting. So, Mike, you've called in. What do you have to say tonight, sir?
Well, I did have a question for Adam, which I knew you weren't going to get to me because you had Kaiser on and Adam, and it was getting late. But my question was this. The last independent or libertarian that had a shot, that had a decent shot to do anything in getting elected was Ross Perot. And I'm glad to say I did vote for the man, but I'm not happy with the results because it gave us Willie Jeff the rapist, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
My question would have been, what makes you any different once they saw that guy Perot as a threat, and he became a threat. Don't get us wrong, he became a threat. Once they saw the elites started to go after him big because they saw him as a threat. What makes ADAM KOKESH thinks he can survive that type of scrutiny by the elite, by the swamp and all this people that are going to go after him if he does become a threat like that?
Well, that's a pretty damn good question. Actually, that's a very damn good question. I'm going to be serious about this. And it's, folks, if you listen to me, you know that my 2 primary areas of disagreement with libertarians, and I call myself a little L libertarian, are borders and drugs. And there are some very important reasons for that, and that primarily has to do with my personal experiences in terms of 41 years of doing a particular job. That having been said, and we may vehemently disagree on a couple of very important aspects, but I will never stop anyone from coming on the show and disagreeing with me unless it gets down to ridiculous ad hominem attacks, etc. And that kind of crap has happened on my email and whatnot. And you know my thoughts about leftists, and they're not interested in having a conversation. ADAM KOKESH is interested in having a conversation. And he is lit up, and that's what makes for a great interview. And that's why I'd love to have him back. There's so much stuff, just like you indicated, Mike. There's so much stuff that I would love to talk to him about, and I anticipate that I will, because as I indicated at the conclusion of the show tonight, when I leave that door, get into the Mark 1 Model 1 Kraut car and go home, I'm going to be typing an email to his promo dude and saying, can we do this again sometime early in January? Adam said he'd like to, and you and I both know, everybody, folks, you know, so much crap is going to change. And having gone down numerous roads from now until January, things change on a daily basis. I have never seen a time in my life where change occurs so rapidly. It is to the point where it really is, it's geometric. And if you think that you're going to stop it, you're absolutely wrong. That's not in the cards, and that's not going to happen. But I continue to want to make this show as valid as possible so that people of different viewpoints can get on. I'm not interested in talking to bleeding leftists who are only going to purge on OMB, blah, 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 blah. I'm pushback for that. That's why I exist. But between now and the time that ADAM KOKESH comes back on, oh my God, will we have so much more material to talk about. This is a target-rich environment in terms of politics today. And so thank you very kindly. Mike, did you have another comment?
Yeah, one last thing is, as far as what the Democrats are trying to do now, and we know with this second guy, that this second so-called whistleblower that they're bringing up, what they're trying to do is to corroborate the first one. And we're not going to know who these people are. That's the nature of the law, but we should, because much like the first one, this second one is probably going to be proven to be falsehood. And it's all about OMB, as you've said before, the man with the dead orange cat on his head. And the fact of the matter is they still think they can beat him.
You owe me a quarter. You keep stealing my lines.
Right. They still think they can beat him.
Mike, didn't we see this before? Didn't we see this same crap before? Yes, we saw it during the Kavanaugh hearings, didn't we? Then we saw post-Kavanaugh, and then post-Kavanaugh, more people come out of the ether. And then oddly enough, when that wasn't efficacious, guess what happened? It fell off the radar screen, and now it's something new. It will always be something new for OMB, won't it, Mike?
Right. They don't get that. I know this was probably in your brain housing group, BZ, but the Democrats have no inkling of the definition of insanity, right?
Well, yeah, insanity and the rule of holes, and also history.
Yeah.
The best indicator of the future performance or lack thereof is past history of an individual or a series of given events. And
right. Think about it. What happened to the Republicans in 1994 or whatever it was as they were going after Bill Clinton.
They subsequently learned a lesson.
Yep.
Ask Newt Gingrich. He'll tell you that all day long, and he's not shy about saying it. We made a terrible cock-up, and we paid the price. We thought it was all about us until it wasn't, and then we got our Mark I Model 1 asses handed to us. And so that's essentially what happened.
Now, the thing, and look, the thing is I don't think the Democrats are smart enough to learn the lesson.
No. As I've said before, and you may have said it too on the show, is they do not possess the wherewithal to stop doing what they're doing now. It cannot be done. That possibility is not within their grasp. It doesn't exist. And I thank them for it.
Our first female speaker hasn't been in control. Yeah, she's had the gavel, but she hasn't been in control since she's gotten the gavel.
Oh, she's Sino. She's absolutely Sino.
Right.
Period. End of statement. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. When you've got people who ran on impeachment. I mean, think about it. What's her name from? Is it Detroit? Oh, we're going to impeach the MFer. You know.
Yeah. Great people.
You know, that's the thing. These guys just don't get it. They don't get it. They won't get it, and they never will get it. To quote the famous football coach Jim Mora. You know.
It's true. Folks, I've got some great audio coming up. Mike, thank you for the call. I greatly appreciate it.
All righty.
Folks, if you are interested in calling yourself, including anybody in chat, or if you just happen to be, I don't know, maybe you're living in Bolivia right now. Maybe you're laboring under Bolivian time. I'm going to give you the phone number to call. Now, if you happen to be watching on the SHR Media YouTube channel or the SHR Media Facebook page, you can see it below. There's the number, 209-284-3210. 209-284-3210. It's right there in front of everybody. I'd like to start off with oh my gosh, it's 20 minutes after, 22 minutes after already, or 21 minutes. Wow, I've got so much for tonight. And I'm, again, thanks to ADAM KOKESH, but let's start with this.
If I give you one message to hold in your hearts today, it's this. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Relish the opportunity to be an outsider, because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. You must keep pushing forward.
Before we go any further, I'd like to say this. This is completely aside from politics. One of my all-time favorite drummers passed away, I think 2 or 3 days ago. His name was Ginger Baker, and I followed him in the 60s. And I was around, I bought all their records. This was Cream, and it was the first basic supergroup. And they called it a superstar group. It was Ginger Baker. The group's name was Cream, and Ginger Baker passed away at the age of 80. Ginger Baker was the drummer. Jack Bruce was the bass player, played a fretless bass. And Eric Clapton, whom some referred to as God, was just a kid, a teenager, when Cream began. Ginger Baker was let's just say, he was a contentious dude. And if you want to watch an entertaining as hell movie, watch Beware of Mr. Baker. That's essentially all I've got to say about that. I loved Ginger Baker. One of my 2 top drummers would be Ginger Baker and Neil Peart. Neil is still alive. He's not playing anymore because he has some physical issues. And now I think we're going to, if I can move this, there we go. Stop that. Play this. That's why I need a producer. But I don't have a producer. But I am going to produce this.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
We're going to go into some news. We're going to go into some impeachment information. We're going to go into some breaking news from today. So stand by.
It will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I will build a great, great wall.
Stand by for news.
This just came out today. And yet I'll wager you probably didn't hear about it. There's a new book out that claims that Rod Rosenstein thought John Kelly and Jeff Sessions would back him against the use, or with the use, of the 25th Amendment against Trump. You heard about it. People were calling you a tinfoil hat wearer, and now it turns out to be absolutely true. Former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein expected that former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and then Attorney General Jeff Sessions would back the use of the 25th Amendment against President Donald John Trump, but they miscalculated, and they were eventually forced out. A new book claims James Stewart, the author of Deep State, appeared on a TV show to discuss the revelations. He said Rosenstein, as opposed to what he said, was completely serious about wearing a wire to entrap the President of the United States. And he felt that he could count on cabinet members to forcibly remove Trump if that failed. And it turns out, well, as we know, Rosenstein denied saying that he wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment, but it turns out that was a lie. There are witnesses to that conversation, and he named 2 cabinet-level people who allegedly were going to support that, namely John Kelly, the Chief of Staff, he's gone, and Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, and he's gone. So you're a tinfoil hat wearer for even thinking about that. If Mike were still on, and I told him, maybe I didn't tell him. I have a Louisiana story for you, a news story. Mike, because Mike happens to live in Louisiana, NBC News came out and said in the Louisiana governor's race, an ad came out from Republican candidate for Louisiana governor, a guy named Ralph Abraham, that released a TV ad that is heinous. It's terrible. It's mean. It's evil. It needs to be excoriated. Well, what is that terrible ad? What does that terrible, terrible ad say? Well, that's why you're here, and that's why we want to listen.
I'm Ralph Abraham. I'm running for governor, and here's the truth. Life begins at conception. Government is too big. Our taxes are too high, and our car insurance is too expensive. President Trump is doing a great job. Facts matter more than feelings. The Second Amendment is self-explanatory, and as a doctor, I can assure you there are only 2 genders. I'm Republican conservative Ralph Abraham. I'm running for governor, and that's the truth.
And so out of all of those misleading statements that terrible conservative said, what do you think was the worst statement made by the terrible, heinous Ralph Abraham? Was it about the Second Amendment? Was it about facts and emotions? No, it was about, I hope you're sitting down for this one, it was about there being just 2 genders. That's what they were talking about. That's what the major issue was. Breaking news. When we come back from the bottom of the hour break, this just came out today. Would you believe it? if I said something similar to, well, Robert Mueller, it turns out, is in fact a lying sack of crap. BZ, say not so. Can't be serious. Yeah, I'm pretty serious.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian, Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's the final 25. The final 25 minutes of the fastest 2 hours on Tuesday night, starting at 11 p.m. Eastern. I win, and I have consistently been winning award after award after award for the Saloon being the finest live late-night talk show on SHR Media from 11 p.m. Eastern to 1 a.m. Eastern. Award after award after award. So many people that I run against, and yet I keep receiving these wonderful awards. So people that have been voting for me continuously, thank you ever so kindly from the bottom of my heart. I told you that I would have a brand new breaking story about Mueller. Then, in terms of stories, I'm going to let you know about the newest Kurt Schlichter story, which is kind of contentious, and then I'm going to ask you questions about that. Then I also have a great Victor Davis Hanson story. The two seem to go together tonight. Very interesting. This just came out today. Mueller was pursuing the FBI director job when he met with Trump in 2017, administration officials say. Do you remember what Mueller said in response to those questions? No, I wasn't. No, I didn't. Multiple administration officials told Fox News that when Robert Mueller met with President Trump in May of 2017, Mueller was indeed pursuing the open post as the director of the FBI, something the former Russian probe special counsel denied under oath during congressional testimony this summer. Amazing. Bob Mueller, liar. Those officials also told Fox News government documents showed Mueller was pursuing the job as a candidate himself. And it came as emails released this month through a Freedom of Information Act request by Judicial Watch. Stop. Why is Judicial Watch, by the way, to whom I send cash, why is Judicial Watch doing the job of the United States government? Because it has to. No one else is challenging them, and frequently Tom Fitton's Judicial Watch, judicialwatch.org, if I'm not mistaken, has to dredge this stuff up. And then we discover, welcome Jack, just so I come in. Then we discover that, oh yeah, well, most all of these people are liars, aren't we? From townhall.com today, Kurt Schlichter wrote this. Critics are aghast as Trump keeps his word about no more wars. Imagine that. Donald Trump came into office promising to not start any new wars and to get us out of the old ones our feckless elite had dragged us into, and now he's doing it in Syria. The usual suspects are terribly outraged. How dare he actually deliver on his promise not to have any more of our precious warriors shipped home in boxes after getting killed on battlefields we can't even pronounce, while refereeing conflicts that began long before America was a thing in campaigns without any kind of coherent objective. Conservatives like me still think of ourselves as hawks. But after hard experience, we've learned to be hawkish only when America's interests are directly at stake. We're not doves. We're just not going to spill our troops' blood when we do not absolutely have to. The elite may not like our attitude, but then it's generally not the elite that ends up having to bury its sons, daughters, husbands, and wives. We do. Kurt Schlichter writes, you know what, I generally like the Kurds. I generally dislike the Turks, but they have been killing each other for a long time, and no one has yet offered a sufficient reason why America should stick its troops in the crossfire between them. Now, we hear words like betrayal tossed around, often by people whose track record, honor, is charitably lacking. But that assumes America had a say in this latest round ramping up. If the Turks are intent on invading, a firm no from the Oval Office is not going to stop a battalion of Leopard tanks. If you want to stop them, you have to be prepared to stop them. That means war. And the president, along with millions of us, say, no thanks. Some solid conservatives, whom I respect, disagree with the president's take. They point out the Kurds have fought with us and that they've had a raw deal. They also point to the Turks' sordid history of genocide, like with the Armenians. These are good points. I spent 16 months away, Kurt Schlichter writes. I spent 16 months away from my family deployed helping Muslims avoid a genocide in Kosovo. But they are not good enough to justify us doing the only thing that can stop the Turks if they are committed to their threatened aggression, i.e., being willing to have American troops fight them. Let's have some real talk, because the orange man bad side of the debate, the side that suddenly all hopped up on war juice, offers nothing but hack cliches to support its amorphous position. The Kurds helped destroy ISIS. True. It's also true the Kurds would have fought ISIS anyway, since the psycho caliphate was right next door. Let's be honest. The Kurds didn't show up for us at Normandy or Inchon or Kaysan or Kandahar. The Syrian Kurds allied with us in their homeland because we shared a common interest in wiping out the head-hopping freak show that was ISIS. Moreover, all Kurds are not equal. The PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, are a bunch of commie terrorists who have been fighting the Turks for a long time. Those Reds are no friends of ours, and it's their antics that seem to be inspiring the Turkish campaign. I have little use for the Turks, but they aren't just picking this fight for shifts and giggles. This is one of the most salient sentences in the entire article. The fact that it's all so confusing is a really, really good reason for us to stay the hell out of it. Moreover, we keep hearing about our obligation to the Kurds. But who's the genius who promised the Kurds that if Turkey attacked the United States would go to war? Would that promise be binding on us if it were? After all, I don't recall my senators voting on a treaty after debate and with accountability to us voters, agreeing to put American lives on the line to protect the sovereignty of hypothetical Kurdistan. This idea that some sort of obligation for America to defend another people can arise out of the treaty ratification process is as bizarre as it is unconstitutional. Now we're supposed to shed our blood because our elites feel we owe it to foreign strangers. I do note that there is one treaty duly signed and ratified by the Senate at play here. That's the NATO treaty, under which we agreed to go to war to defend Turkey if attacked. If Erdogan, that thug, were more cunning, he would assert Article 5 and demand NATO forces come to Turkey's defense against the cross-border attacks by the PKK. None of this is to justify what Turkey is doing. I hope the tough and brave non-communist Kurds bloody these bullies' nose. But I can't think of any way to adequately explain to the mom and dad of a 20-year-old 82nd Airborne 11 Bravo paratrooper from Rancho Cucamonga why their son got his head blown off in northern Syria fighting the Kurds' war for them. In the Army War College, they drilled into us the necessity of a clearly defined objective as the foundation of every successful military campaign. If you do not know exactly what you wish to achieve, you cannot plan and execute effectively. Okay, critics, what's our proposed objective in northern Syria? So stop with the cliches about betrayals and abandoning allies, and tell me, Kurt Schlichter writes, exactly what would we seek to achieve? And then tell me, again, exactly how many dead Americans we should sacrifice in order to achieve it. We have our own national interests to protect. The threat to America is not Turks imposing a security zone a few miles inside Syria. It's China pumping out a couple warships a month and deploying new carrier-killing missiles using tech they steal from us under the noses of our politically preoccupied FBI and CIA. If the president's critics in Congress really want to be tough guys, let them pass a declaration of war and let them sign their names to the butcher's bill instead of trying to get Trump to walk out to the end of the breach so they can saw it off. Let's be clear. And I need to be crystal clear because the gung-ho gang's MO is to mischaracterize its opponent's views to distract from the strategic bankruptcy of its own. That fighting for the Kurds would not be immoral. It's a good cause. But we can't intervene every time there's a good cause. Iraq was a good cause and a disaster. I'd come back to active duty if the Army was that desperate and serve there proudly. Our troops will do everything we ask of them and more. They will lay down their lives for this cause if we send them, and that's the point. We owe our men and women in uniform the moral courage to make the hard decision not to fight, even when we see a grievous wrong unfolding where there is no compelling national interest and no clear objective. We can't garrison Syria forever. We can't right every wrong around the globe. How many dead Americans is it worth to stop the Turks and Kurds from brawling? I and our president say exactly none. Those who disagree owe us all an exact number of their own. What happens if the liberals achieve their dream of an America they rule now? Kurt Schlichter's going to be back on. He may be back on next Tuesday night. I'm trying to work this out right now. And he's got another book coming. I talked to him about his book, People's Republic. I talked to him about his book, Indian Country. And I talked to him about his book, Wildfire. His fourth book comes out in November. And so when it does, or earlier, perhaps, I'm going to have Kurt Schlichter back on the show. Now, the question for all of you, and I may as well make my point clear right now. So the essence of the question is simply, do we leave Syria? Is President Trump correct? Or is this a base betrayal of, in every way, of everything that we stand for? And my perspective, my point is, no, I happen to be with Kurt Schlichter. I'm done. D-O-N-E. No Syria. Pull out. You will not stop conflicts that have been going for literally thousands of years. So seldom do people ever refer to the real point of the Middle East in terms of the Middle Eastern version of Islam as practiced, which is Sunni and Shia. The madness of it all. I'm with Trump on this. If he leaves, it's not a betrayal. Why should our men and women die there? And I think that's a question that needs to be answered. This occasion, hell yes, I'm with Trump. Victor Davis Hanson came out with an article talking about madness. See the link there? Not bad, BZ. Thank you very much. He wrote it 2 days ago on October the 6th, and it's called The Madness of Progressive Projection. And you're going to listen to this article and you're going to go, oh, Victor Davis Hanson, dude, you nailed it. Because he writes, the only Trump crime was in his winning an election he was not supposed to win. So after the election, prior illegal acts were redefined as legal and legal ones as illegal. Victor Davis Hanson of Madness of Projection of Progressive Projection writes, strangest among all of the many melodramas of the last 2 weeks were the blaring headlines that President Trump had dared to talk with the Australian Prime Minister and reference the role of foreign governments, and in particular Australia, in U.S. electoral politics in 2016. Given the hue and cry of Democrats in the last 3 years, they should have been delighted that the president was preemptorily warning foreign nations to cease to curry favor with presidential candidates and asking them to hand over what information, if any, they had of past collusion. In fact, they were outraged and once again returned to collusion charges as if Trump were subverting the 2020 election. I accuse you of doing what I did. That's the new paradigm. Unfortunately, projection is now an encompassing explanation for almost everything the left alleges. After all, the Australian government's own connection with U.S. elections is only on the American political radar because in 2016, its former foreign minister, Alexander Downer, who had steered a large Australian donation to the Clinton Foundation, may have colluded with intelligence agencies to entrap George Papadopoulos, a minor and transient Trump campaign employee, to find dirt on the Trump campaign. Bringing up Australia is like the left leaving a scented trail to its own past miscreant behavior. Take the Ukraine. It would be hard for any Democrat politico to argue that Ukraine was not involved in 2016 to feed faux charges of collusion to Hillary Clinton. a fact even the liberal press once repeatedly conceded. Ukrainians were only too happy to meet and consult with U.S. intelligence officials when they assumed Hillary Clinton was to be elected, and their yeoman service in frying the sure loser Trump would somehow be appreciated and awarded. When Joe Biden makes the accusation that Trump was colluding with the new Ukrainian president to reopen investigation of the Biden influence peddling conglomerate, naturally, we knew that Ukraine in general had been leveraged in the past to help the Clinton campaign, and by Biden himself in particular to enrich his own son. Poor, contorted Ukraine now backpedals as fast as it can from trying to help destroy Trump in 2016 to suggesting in 2019 that it regrets having done so, and soon it will hedge its cooperation in 2020, unsure whether the Democrat colluders of 2016 are going to return to power, and it can expect to be punished for renouncing them in 2019. So in surreal fashion, every charge that Biden levels against Trump's supposed thought crimes amounts to more evidence of his own real wrongdoing in using threats to cut off aid to a foreign nation in exchange for dropping investigation of his wayward son. The latter's only apparent qualifications for employment are shameless readiness to play on his father's position. Imagine that. Projection as a leftist symptom came to the fore during the Mueller investigation when Mueller's dream team of progressive attorneys began pressuring a number of minor Trump former campaign officials and eventually his national security advisor on trumped-up charges, from leaking sensitive documents to obstruction of justice to lying to federal officials to collusion, whatever that non-legal term denotes, with foreign governments, and in particular Russia. In each case, Mueller ended up hunting down possible misdemeanors while ignoring likely felonies and leaking. By James Comey's own admission, he had leaked confidential presidential memos he composed for the express purpose of later using them as insurance policies against Trump, some of which material was classified as secret. As far as lying to federal officials, Mueller simply ignored that Andrew McCabe was under federal referrals for lying to investigators about his own strategic leaking of FBI investigatory material. Both McCabe and Comey likely lied to a FISA court by not apprising judges that their prime evidence, the Steele dossier, was not verified. Its foreign authors severed from FBI contractual employment, and many of its assertions known to be demonstrably untrue. The left has accused critics of Biden of indulging in supposition and hearsay and using unnamed sources, despite the fired Ukrainian prosecutor's insistence that he was dismissed due to Biden's interference and demands to end the investigation into the likely criminality of Biden's own son, Hunter. Yet the so-called whistleblower complaint admittedly is without any first-hand evidence and entirely rests on two nothings. Second and third-hand information the complainant claims he heard, and sources within the White House for such rumors that remain anonymous. In other words, accusers of the president who refuse to identify themselves. So in truth, the whistleblower is no such thing. He or she is a disgruntled and partisan intelligence bureaucrat that we know works for the CIA, who violated the whistleblower statutes by first going to Representative Adam Schiff's staff on the House Intelligence Committee to help in translating his narrative into Mueller's Steele dossier legalese and in strategizing, PZ wake up, the timing of his accusations. So expect a series of John Brennan surrogate intelligence agency whistleblowers to follow once it is established that now hearsay is admissible, and there's no downside to violating the statutes by first conferring with Adam Schiff's staff. So, conflict of what? Conflict of interest? We're hearing allegations that Attorney General Barr cannot investigate any of the whistleblower's accusations because he is mentioned as interested in learning from the Ukraine any information available concerning 2016 interference into the U.S. election. This coming at a time when a nondescript, mostly unethical, and quite disturbed Hunter Biden parlayed his ignorance about foreign affairs, the oil business, and Ukraine into a lucrative consultantship predicated on the wink and nod reality that his dad, who knew quite well what his heretofore miscreant son had landed upon, was overseeing U.S.-Ukrainian aid. But conflict of interest is, in fact, the entire basis of the last 3 years of endless investigation of the 2016 election and purported Trump collusion. Do we remember the contortions taken by Andrew McCabe to ignore the fact that he was investigating Hillary Clinton emails shortly after Clinton-related funds were given to his own wife, a candidate for the state legislature in Virginia? A blatant conflict of interest was the intertwine of Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, two of Mueller's investigators and previously at the nexus of investigating almost every alleged wrongdoing of Trump. Neither disclosed that they were conducting FBI business as supposed independent investigators while conducting their own affair. Neither disclosed that they were investigating supposed Trump crimes while communicating daily their disgust for Trump, their disdain for his supporters, and their boasts about stopping the Trump candidacy and later his presidency. Neither disclosed why and when they were fired from the Mueller team, perhaps in deference to Robert Mueller's unethical gambit of staggering their departures, claiming each was merely they were just reassigned, and not disclosing their absences until weeks after they left. Their conflicts of interest turned to farce when we learned that the two helped reclassify their former boss James Comey's secret memos of presidential conversations as non-felonious confidential, a sort of replay of Strzok's earlier rewording of the Comey assessment of the Clinton email scandal to ensure she would not be charged with a felony. The locus classicus of conflict of interest was the Loretta Lynch-James Comey investigation of candidate Hillary Clinton. Comey has admitted he handled the Clinton examination in expectation she would win the presidency and thus become, his new boss. Lynch has confessed, but only after being caught by the media, that she met secretly with Bill Clinton at a time when the Justice Department was supposedly investigating his wife, or asked to believe that their respective private jets actually bumped into each other on the Phoenix tarmac. Someone count the nation's average daily meetings of private jets and compute the possibility of having such a happenstance meeting, and that they suddenly decided to have a chat about their grandchildren and other mutual family gossip. And what about the collusion boomerang? Collusion? Mueller found no proof that Trump colluded with Russian officials, but to come to such a conclusion, by needs, he had to ignore all the evidence leading to an open and shut case, that Hillary Clinton used 3 firewalls, the Democrat National Committee, the Perkins Cole legal firm, and Fusion GPS opposition research team, to hide her payments to British national Christopher Steele, an admitted Trump hater who hired Russian fabricators to find dirt on Trump and then created a mostly mythical dossier on Clinton's appointment. In turn, the dossier was seeded among fellow traveler Trump haters in the DOJ, FBI, DNI, and CIA, like, to name a few, Bruce Orr, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and Andrew McCabe. These partisan allies of the Democrats, he writes Democrats, working in government made sure that it was leaked to the media before the 2016 elections. So, obstruction? Trump was not referred for wrongdoing on obstruction because even the partisan Mueller team believed that they could never indict him after his tenure was over, given the paucity of actionable evidence. After all, it's hard to obstruct justice if a crime didn't take place. But given that a FISA court was deluded, classified documents leaked, government officials caught lying, and foreign governments found to have compiled dirt on a presidential candidate, and no one yet has been charged, the question arises, why? Who made the decision to quash the investigation of Hillary Clinton after she destroyed over 30,000 emails under subpoena? Who excused Obama officials after they knowingly misled federal FISA court justices? Who leaked information about a surveilled phone call between Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador? Who decided it was acceptable for Samantha Power to request over 260 times the unmasking of names of American citizens swept up in government surveillance, many of which were illegally leaked to the press, and most of which Power denied requesting and alleged others had used her name to do so. Somewhere, somehow, there was a great deal of obstruction and distortion of justice that so far has prevented the pursuit of these criminal acts. Destruction of evidence? House Democrats are demanding that the supposed transcript of the Trump phone call to the Ukrainian president be kept safe, as it might disappear. This in the aftermath of revelations that Hillary Clinton bleach-bitted over 30,000 of her emails under subpoena and had her mobile devices crushed. This in the aftermath of the Mueller teams and FBI sheepishly conceding that hundreds of text messages between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok simply disappeared. This in the aftermath of the hard drives of the supposed hacked DNC computer never being turned over to the FBI, but instead to the Ukrainian-connected CrowdStrike, whose current whereabouts are not really known to this day. Recently, David Gergen warned that if the whistleblower were injured, it would be Trump's fault. I'm assuming Gergen knows that 3 presidential candidates have boasted of their desires to beat up the president or see him disappear for good in an elevator. Rhetorically, killing the president is a favorite pastime of Hollywood celebrities. Does Gergen remember the fate of Representative Steve Scalise and the attempted takeout of the many Republican congressional leadership by an unhinged Bernie Sanders zealot, or the threats issued by Representative Maxine Waters to hound and harass Trump officials throughout their daily routines? And what about the nature of projection? You know, a cynic might conclude that the past wasted 3 years were really not about Trump at all. He was entirely irrelevant and was referenced largely as a means to preempt investigation of massive Obama illegality in 2016, which centered on warping the law to destroy his supposedly widely detestable and dangerous campaign that threatened Democratic control of the government. As a result, in almost every instance of alleged Trump wrongdoing, the accusers only bring attention to themselves and to their own actual wrongdoing. What is behind this strange collective psychological condition of projecting one's own guilt onto another? In part, out of embarrassment that Hillary Clinton blew an election despite having the edge in money, the media, and the popular culture. Trump was recalibrated as a cheater. Otherwise, it was impossible to accept the Manhattan wheeler dealer had outsmarted, outcampaigned, and out-hustled the progressives' best and brightest, and worse yet, might have every intention of keeping his campaign promises to undo the entire Obama agenda. For tens of thousands of government careerists, by and large political partisans of the Democrats, using any means necessary was justified by the supposedly noble ends of ending the course Trump. Groupthink ensured that led to mass hysteria as the fantasies needed to invoke the 25th Amendment, as you heard me discuss regarding Rod Rosenstein, the Logan Act, and the Emoluments Clause, meant that their own collusion and obstruction simply no longer mattered. One would have thought Trump got caught on a hot mic offering a quid pro quo to Vladimir Putin or monitoring the communications of Associated Press reporters. Instead, the zeal and loudness with which one advanced Trump collusion narratives brought both careerist and psychological rewards. The old scandals like Uranium One, the shenanigans around the Iran deal, the hot mic Obama quid pro quos, and the Hillary email fix were, they're shrugged off as proof of progressive zeal put to a good cause. To raise the question of unequal application of the law is now dismissed as, that's whataboutism. In some, had Trump just lost the election, the illegal use of the intelligence agencies by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's administration would have been an insider topic of pride. A now defeated and humiliated Trump would never have been charged with collusion and obstruction during the 2016 campaign. Instead, he would have been written off as a naif who never understood left-wing warnings analogous to Senator Chucky Schumer's later admonition that Trump was being really dumb. Given that you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Or Samantha Power's post-election smirk, not a good idea to piss off John Brennan. The only Trump crime was in his winning an election he was not supposed to win, which then pissed off the wrong people and, of course, amounted to acting dumb with the intelligence agencies. So after the election, prior illegal acts were redefined as legal and legal ones as illegal.
Monsieur has been locked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network, where I'm broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. If you want to contact me, you'll find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and also by Pratt & Whitney Engines Thrust. You can trust. Tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle 1 refueling team, with whom I shall be consorting in less than an hour. And thank you ever so kindly for listening live. Thanks to ADAM KOKESH in the first hour. Thanks to you for being in chat. Thanks for listening in podcast, listening live. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for taking the time out of your busy day or night to do so. Thanks again to Simone, Alaskan, Jack, Dave, Kaiser, one viewer, everybody who was in here in chat. God bless the American trucker. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Chat show? Who knows?
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.